Got a quiet corner ready. We're about to embark on a gripping journey. Today's story dives into anxiety, control, and the boundaries we need in love. If you've ever felt unheard in your own relationship, these words might hit home. Stay with me, you may find a piece of your own story here. Emily, 20, and Josh, 22, were high school sweethearts, their love story born in the halls of their small-town school. 4 years in, they were the couple everyone envied, holding hands at football games, sharing late-night study sessions, and dreaming of a future together. Emily, a junior in college studying nursing, was practical but warm, with a laugh that could light up a room. Josh, a senior majoring in engineering, was charming and driven, the kind of guy who'd fix your car and crack a joke while doing it. They'd weathered long-distance semesters and teenage insecurities, building a bond that felt unbreakable. Emily had always been open about her dreams. Over coffee dates or quiet nights on her dorm couch, she'd talk about wanting kids someday, when the time was right. Maybe when I'm 28 or 30, she'd say, her eyes bright with possibility. After I've got a steady job, a place of our own, you know. I want to be ready. Josh would nod, smiling, and they'd move on to other topics: movies, classes, or plans for the summer. To Emily, these were casual conversations, the kind you have when you're young and mapping out a life together. But something shifted in Josh last spring. It started subtly, almost imperceptibly. Emily had been on birth control pills since she was 16, prescribed not just for contraception, but to manage excruciating menstrual pain that used to leave her curled up in bed for days. The pills were a lifeline, giving her control over her body and her life. Josh knew this, seeing her wince through cramps early in their relationship, had even driven to the pharmacy to pick up her prescription once. So, when he began questioning her use of the pills, Emily was caught off guard. At first, it was a passing comment during a movie night. "You sure those pills are safe long-term?" Josh asked, scrolling on his phone. Emily shrugged, explaining again how they helped her pain. But the comments didn't stop. Josh started diving into online forums, reading articles about birth control's dangers, claims about infertility, hormonal imbalances, even cancer risks. He'd send Emily links late at night. Texts like, "You should read this. It's scary what that stuff does to your body." Emily tried to brush it off, but the messages kept coming, each one heavier than the last. Soon, Josh's concern turned into obsession. Over dinner at their favorite diner, he'd steer the conversation to her pills, ignoring her attempts to change the subject. "I just don't want you to mess up your chances of having kids," he'd say, his tone earnest but edged with judgment. He'd quote statistics from blog shocky claims about post-pill infertility or endocrine disruption as if Emily hadn't researched her own health for years. When she explained, again, that the pills were for her pain, not just birth control, he'd nod but then circle back days later with the same arguments. I'm just looking out for you," he'd insist. But to Emily, it felt like he wasn't listening at all. The pressure escalated. Josh began questioning her doctor's advice, suggesting she try natural remedies for her cramps instead. He'd text her articles about herbal teas or yoga, dismissing her point that those hadn't worked before. One night, after a long shift at her part-time job, Emily found Josh waiting in her dorm, a stack of printed studies on her desk. "I really think you should stop the pills," he said, his voice low, almost pleading. "What if they're hurting you? What if we can't have kids because of this?" The wee Stungamly hadn't realized her personal health choices had become his crusade. Emily's frustration grew. She wasn't just annoyed by Josh's fixation. She felt unseen. He wasn't asking about her pain, her experience, or the years she'd spent managing it. Instead, he was fixating on a future she wasn't ready for, dismissing her reality in favor of his fears. "You don't get it," she snapped during one heated argument. "Without these pills, I'm in agony. Why can't you trust me to know what's best for my body?" Josh looked hurt, but his response missed the mark. "I just want us to be safe," he said, as if her pain was a minor inconvenience compared to his vision of their future. The dynamic was shifting, and Emily felt it in her bones. What used to be a partnership now felt like a power struggle. Josh's love, once a source of comfort, was starting to feel like control, his concern less about her well-being and more about enforcing his own narrative. She still loved him, still saw the boy who'd made her mixtapes in high school, but she couldn't shake the growing unease. Was this just a phase? Or was Josh showing her a side she'd never seen? As spring semester rolled on, Emily began to wonder how much of herself she'd have to sacrifice to keep the love they'd built. Emily's unease grew as Josh's fixation deepened. What started as concern over her birth control pills spiraled into something far more invasive. By the end of spring semester, Josh's comments took a stranger turn. Over pizza at their usual campus hangout, he dropped lines like, "You know, you're getting older, Em. If you wait too long, it'll be harder to have kids." Emily, barely 20, would stare at him, stunned. "I'm not even thinking about that yet," she'd reply, trying to laugh it off. But Josh's eyes were serious, his tone insistent, as if her biological clock was already ticking. His scrutiny extended beyond her reproductive plans. Josh began policing her habits, framing it as care for their future family. He'd critique her diet, suggesting she cut out carbs or eat more fertility-boosting foods like avocados and salmon. "You've got to think about your body now," he'd say, pointing at her plate of fries. Emily, who'd always been confident in her choices, started second-guessing herself. One evening, as she ran a brush through her hair, Josh commented that her frizzy ends might be a sign of hormonal imbalance. The remark, absurd and baseless, hit her hard. She'd always loved her wild curls, but now she saw them through his lens, another flaw to fix. Josh's behavior grew more intrusive. He'd text her reminders to drink water, track her sleep, or avoid caffeine, claiming it was for the kids we'll have someday. Emily felt like her life was under a microscope. During a study session, he noticed her chipped nail polish and launched into a lecture about how stress could mess with her cycle. When she snapped, "It's just nail polish." "Josh," he looked wounded, muttering, "I'm just trying to help." But his help felt like control, each comment chipping away at her autonomy. Emily started dreading their time together, knowing every interaction would veer into a health audit or a lecture about her body. The shift in their dynamic was stark. Dates, once filled with laughter and shared dreams, now felt like interrogations. Josh would ask if she'd taken her pills, then pivot to how they might ruin her chances of motherhood. Even casual moments like watching a movie were tainted. He'd pause the TV to read her an article about optimizing fertility or quiz her on her exercise routine. Emily felt suffocated, her personal boundaries trampled under the guise of caring for their future. The Josh she'd fallen forth, one who'd surprise her with coffee or dance with her in the rain, was slipping away, replaced by someone who saw her as a project to manage. The constant pressure took a toll. Emily's confidence waned. She'd catch herself in the mirror, wondering if Josh was right. Maybe her body was off. Maybe she was unknowingly sabotaging their future. The self-doubt was new and unsettling. She'd always trusted her instincts, but Josh's relentless critiques made her question everything. Worse, she felt alone in the relationship. When she tried to voice her discomfort, Josh would deflect. "I'm just looking out for us," he'd say, his tone soft but final. "Don't you want to be healthy for our kids?" The us and our kids were weapons, twisting her objections into selfishness. A nagging thought began to surface. Maybe Josh's obsession wasn't about her at all. Late one night, staring at her ceiling after another tense conversation, Emily wondered if he was projecting his own fears. Was Josh worried about his own fertility, but too ashamed to admit it? The way he fixated on her body, her choices, her future felt like he was deflecting something deeper. She'd read about men who channeled personal anxieties into controlling their partners, and the idea gnawed at her. But when she hinted at it during an argument, "Is this about you, Josh?" he shut down, accusing her of overreacting. "You're making me the bad guy," he said, and the conversation ended there. By summer, their relationship felt like a shadow of itself. Emily still loved Josh, or at least the version of him she'd known, but love wasn't enough to erase the strain. Every interaction carried the weight of his expectations, and she was tired of justifying her choices. She missed the ease of their early days, the way they could talk for hours without judgment. Now, she felt like a passenger in her own life, tethered to a partner who didn't see her as an equal, but as a means to an end. The question loomed, could she stay with someone whose love felt more like ownership? Emily wasn't sure, but the answer was starting to matter more than ever. By the start of summer, Emily couldn't ignore the truth anymore. Josh's relentless focus on her body, her choices, and their hypothetical future wasn't love, it was control, cloaked in the guise of care. The realization hit her one humid evening, sitting alone in her dorm after another draining argument. She'd spent months defending her decisions, shrinking under his critiques, and questioning her own worth. The girl who once trusted her instincts was slipping away, replaced by someone who felt like a stranger in her own skin. Enough was enough. Emily knew she had to reclaim herself. The first step was confronting the dynamic head-on. She asked Josh to meet her at a quiet park near campus, a place they'd once loved for its shady benches and easy silences. As they sat, Emily took a deep breath and laid it out. "I need you to stop trying to control my health," she said, her voice steady despite the knot in her stomach. "My body, my pills, my future, they're my choices. You don't get to decide what's best for me." She explained how his constant comments about her age, her diet, her supposed hormonal issues made her feel small, like her pain and autonomy didn't matter. "Love means listening, Josh. Support me, not turning your worries into my burden." Josh's reaction was a mix of defensiveness and confusion. "I'm just trying to protect our future," he said, his brows furrowed. "You're making it sound like I'm the bad guy." When Emily pressed him, pointing out how he ignored her explanations, dismissed her pain, and fixated on kids she wasn't ready for, doubled down. "You're not taking this seriously," he snapped. "What if you regret waiting? What if I'm right?" His words confirmed what Emily had feared. This wasn't about partnership. It was about his need to control the narrative, to soothe his anxieties by reshaping her life. Emily didn't back down. She set clear boundaries, something she'd never done so explicitly before. "I need space to make my own decisions," she told him. "No more articles, no more lectures, no more acting like my body's a problem you have to fix. If you can't respect that, we can't keep going." It was the hardest thing she'd ever said. She still saw glimpses of the Josh she'd fallen fourth boy who'd cheered at her soccer games, who'd held her hand through tough finals. But that Josh was buried under this new version, one who seemed to love an idea of her more than the real her. The weeks that followed were tense. Josh tried, in his way, to dial back. He'd catch himself mid-comment and stop, or send a half-hearted sorry, or slipping into old habits. But the change felt superficial, like he was humoring her rather than understanding why his behavior hurt. Emily, meanwhile, was rediscovering her voice. She started journaling, pouring out her frustrations and fears. She confided in a close friend, Mia, who validated what she'd been feeling. "That's not love, Em. That's him trying to run your life." Mia's words were a lifeline, reminding Emily she wasn't crazy for wanting respect. As summer wore on, Emily made a tough step back from the relationship. Not a full breakup, but a pause to protect herself. She told Josh she needed time to focus on her own growth, to rebuild the confidence his control had eroded. "I can't be with someone who doesn't see me as an equal," she said, tears in her eyes, but her resolve firm. Josh didn't take it well. He accused her of giving up on them, of not caring about their future. But Emily held her ground. She'd spent too long bending to his fears. Now, she was choosing herself. The future of their relationship was uncertain. Emily still loved Josh, or at least the memory of who he'd been. Part of her hoped he'd reflect, maybe even seek help to untangle his anxieties. But hope wasn't enough to bridge the gap. She knew now that real love required mutual respect, the kind that listens and trusts, not the kind that demands and dictates. For the first time in months, Emily felt a spark of clarity. She deserved to be loved right, and that started with loving herself enough to set boundaries. As she walked through campus, the August sun warm on her face, Emily felt lighter. She wasn't sure if Josh would ever change, or if their love could survive this reckoning. But she was certain of one thing: she was worth more than a relationship that dimmed her light. With each step, she was learning to listen to herself again, and that was a start.